What screams out early 2000s? To a lesser degree, street punk was big in the early 2000s. Tons of leopard, zebra print, skin-tight jeans with ankle zippers, supercharged brightly colored mohawks and liberty spikes, a bondage belt, bullet belt, and studded belt worn together, bum flaps. What a time. Story time. Eiffel 65 is an Italian band. My family is from Italy and we went summer of '99 for vacation. I was sure to bring my mini-disc player, and at my grandmom's house we could watch the box, but it was for Italy, so it was all the pop hits in Italy at the time. So I recorded the songs off the TV, one of those of Eiffel 65 song. So I come back to the States. I worked in a sandwich shop with other people around my age, so I put this music on and every laughs at how stupid Eiffel 65 song is. They would constantly make fun of how I liked such a stupid song. I was like, I don't know. It was popular over there and catchy. The video was also weird. I was kind of embarrassed, but whatever. Fast forward a few weeks later and it's in heavy rotation on US pop radio stations. Then my coworkers, who constantly bring up how they chastised me for liking that song. Shrek, Bahman, expensive DVD players, a collection of Harry Potter books that ends at Goblet of Fire, Beyblades, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and the unbearable thrill and excitement that came with the launch of next-gen consoles, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, GBA. Those are some of the standout cultural memories from my childhood between 2000 to 2003. Oh shit, wait, we can't forget to Unami, collecting entire DBZ sagas on VHS so you could finish the Image of the Spines, Delta or Quest, and the best run of cartoons on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. Dexter's Lab, Ed, and Eddie, Cow and Chicken, Jimmy Neutron, SpongeBob, and Johnny Bravo were all flying high, even though some of those started before the new millennium. Ed forgot Zoids. VHS to DVD was a huge jump that people were excited to take. A lot less enthusiasm existed for the change from DVD to Blu-ray, I think, unless you had a really high-end TV in 07/07/08/09 that made Blu-ray worth it. There wasn't a whole lot to make the expensive changeover very compelling. That's anecdotal, of course, but probably not far from the mark. Not to mention that the PS3 cost a small fortune at a time when the economy was in its worst state in 8 years back into the late 00s. The PS2 came at the right time and with a more reasonable cost, $400. 100% this. Publicly funded elections, no individual donations, no corporate donations, no PACs. All elected officials must divest their stocks and other speculative assets and place all their money in a blind trust of companies that manufacture goods in the USA. Corruption and the appearance of corruption should be treated on par with crimes like murder, rape, and assault. Agreed. I firmly believe that political corruption should result in the death penalty. Let me clarify. I do not mean the mayor that bought fancy curtains for his office. I mean the politicians that insider trade during a crisis while lying to their constituents, the ones that lied to start wars, etc. Well, yes, that's why most moderates wouldn't exactly go for execution but rather prison. Still though, politicians already use everything they can to get rid of others. I don't even wanna image the underground shit, so yeah, wouldn't be that much different. But you get rid of most corruption cases, let's face it, some will always do it secretly. I'm not sure I'd ask for the death penalty, but some penalty would be nice. You hear every day of scandals that go nowhere. At the very least, these people should be losing their positions. I don't care if you forgot to include something on your disclosure forms. You get fired from a regular job for forgetting way less sleazy stuff than that. This sounds good and all, but it is demonstrably false. Politicians don't have passed laws limiting themselves. Citizens United was notable in part because it overturned laws passed by Congress specifically to limit the amount of money that could be put into political efforts. You're not missing much. The controversial sort contains a mix of downvoted left-wing opinions, downvoted right-wing opinions, and downvoted stupidity. It's basically the fringes of either side that even the more moderates don't agree with, along with straight-up edgy sheet posting, and completely factually incorrect takes on issues that should never have become politicized in the first place. Depends. Do you want to read hot takes about economics opinions disguised as politics opinions, healthcare opinions disguised as politics opinions, or cheap shots at US political figures who aren't in office anymore? Then you will be happier in 5 minutes. Otherwise, I'd steer clear. 'Tis a silly place. The two-party system is the natural result of politicians and voters making optimal strategic decisions in a system with first-past-the-post voting, proportional representation for parliamentary bodies, like the Senate and the House of Representation, and ranked choice voting is known to fix the problem, both in theory and in practice. You get other problems, like having to form a coalition government in order to reach a majority or giving a voice to fairly extreme parties such as UKIP. But countries with these voting systems do have more than 2 viable parties. On the whole, I think these problems are fairly minor compared to the profound theoretical problems with first-past-the-post voting. There is a movement in the US to adopt ranked choice voting, usually on a state or local level. Adopting it on a nation level would require a constitutional amendment, so I don't see that happening anytime soon. I'd really like ranked voting. There may be even better options. I can't remember all the other methods that have been suggested, but it would definitely be an improvement over what we have. People could vote for the third party they actually like without fear of wasting their vote, and then they could also vote for the lesser of the traditional villains as their second or third choice. Australia has ranked choice voting, and ranked politicians to go with it. The trouble with ranked choice is that politics geeks fucking love it, but minimum effort voters can't be bothered with the details. So you end up with increasing desperate savings measures, and in the end 80% of voters just vote some party and let the rest fall where they may. Look up donkey vote if you want a scary experience. I think you would be better to start with compulsory voting, not least because then we didn't expect so many voters becomes inexcusable, and a proportional system, ideally with multi-memory electorates. That's where we get into increasingly desperate savings measures, and for a country like the USA you have to remember that they are starting with zero knowledge and zero experience. That's why I'm suggesting simple, easy to understand fixes. Everyone has to vote is close enough to every adult citizen should have at least the theoretical possibility of being able to vote that most people can probably understand why it's a good idea, partisan control of the electoral process notwithstanding. Think of it as a set of goals starting from the easiest and working up to the more advanced ones. Everyone eligible has to vote is easy. More people should be eligible is only a little bit harder. Herr Clark with random ballot order and optional exhaustion is very hard. National standard for ballots is a pile of constitutional amendments, and independent election officials is next to impossible. First you amend the constitutions to even allow that. Hi, I agree with you that our political system is badly broken, and in large part because the voting system is so terrible. I share your goal of a system that better represents us and reduces the incentives for negative campaigning. After studying voting systems for a while, though, I came to learn that ranked choice voting doesn't deliver the benefits I was hoping for. It doesn't eliminate spoilers, as is often claimed. It has some smaller benefits, but also some major drawbacks, both practical and technical. One of the most serious is that RCV increases the fraction of ballots that are spoiled and discarded, and significantly more so in low-income neighborhoods, measured to be about 5 to 10% more in real elections. Can you imagine penalizing the vote count in all the poorer areas by 5%? It would have a massive effect. Sadly, I have to say that RCV is no better than our current system, and probably worse. Fortunately, there exists a method that is far easier to explain and to understand, far simpler to implement and to audit, and actually does solve most of the problems you and I want to solve. It's called approval voting, and it's so simple. We don't even need to print new ballots. Read about it here. https://electionshins.org/library/approval voting versus serve/. I'm a Christian. I also believe this. Not all people of even the same religion believe in the same stuff. Many Christians, for example, don't interpret the Bible in the same way. So why should we allow some of those Christians to enforce laws, and the same Christians that are good with the church controlling the government would lose it if an ally we trust was on the US dollar? It's hypocritical. The many phenomena described by science don't give a damn about politics. Corona doesn't care about your votes, but politics sure wants to get its grubby hands all over science. Well, the money behind politics wants to get its grubby hands all over the science, and politics is the rusty, grubby tool by which it does so. It's not even greed as much as the need to survive. Very few people are going to fund science for science. It's why funding to repeat experiments is so low while being so important. Even universities want the prestige that comes with science, which leads to more money for them. Companies want a return on their investment, and scientists need to eat too. Scientist here, while I get what you are saying, I will point out doing science is always political on some level because people are the ones doing science, and everyone has their subjective opinions on how to best do things. However, my bet is you mean something like the scientific consensus shouldn't be political. I'll agree there for sure. I know too many people who claim they like science, but in actuality just like trivia facts because they'll just ignore whatever they don't agree with personally, as if the universe gives a damn what you believe. The U.S. government has no power or right to abolish private ephemeral conversations via backdooring or prohibiting encryption, no matter what its rationale. So many of my politics have changed in the past several decades, but I will die on this hill. Secure encryption, to the extent that this is possible technologically, is an individual right, and governments which infringe it ought to be defied and subverted, even if it causes social problems, even if it supposedly makes us less safe. I support an amendment to the U.S. Constitution guaranteeing a well-defined right to privacy. One more. Civil asset forfeiture, as it currently is superstitious legal voodoo. It should not be possible to seize assets before a guilty conviction, and this business of naming property as a defendant is an ugly absurdity which constitutes nothing short of tyranny. Immoral, sure, but remember that legal and illegal are constructs of society and not a reference to any fundamental truth. It's an important distinction to keep in mind, because if you object to it on the grounds that it's illegal, you may be informed that you're objectively wrong, but if you object to it on the grounds that it's immoral, you'll be able to get a proper debate. Ask yourself why you'd go into politics. It seems to me the options are: A, because you want to serve the people and improve things; B, because you want to fight change and keep things exactly as they are because you believe them to be right; C, because you want to make money. It seems to me that while A and B are both honorable, only A serves an ever-changing social landscape, and yet all we ever end up with is C. I was super excited to rank my ballot for the first time in NYC this year. Unfortunately, a minor bureaucratic mistake resulted in a miscount of the initial and unofficial tally. The result of that mistake: we didn't have first-round results until a few days later than expected. A lot of people are up in arms blaming rank choice now, and I'm worried this inconsequential snafu may have fucked up any potential for it being implemented statewide here, as well as it being used as an argument against rank choice elsewhere. Brexit is the most incomprehensible stupid decision since the First World War, and that was the most comprehensively stupid decision of all time. There isn't any extra money for the NHS, which suddenly is short-staffed because we rely on foreign-born staff. The red tape hadn't magically disappeared. In fact, it is far worse. We aren't free. In fact, the government is passing legislation that takes away fundamental rights such as peaceful protest. The supermarkets are running out of food. That wasn't Project Fear, and the Northern Ireland issue wasn't fixed in the course of an afternoon. You are allowed to oppose 1 or 2 or 50 policies and philosophies of your selected political candidate and party. Likewise, you are allowed to subscribe to 1 or 2 or 50 policies and philosophies of the opposing political candidate and party. You are not two-faced, you are not a traitor, you are not a Nazi or wokey, you are open-minded. Yeah, that's a big one. And even better if our politicians were to adopt this practice. I think it was 20 or 30 years since a bill had been passed that had a majority of both parties voting for it. Since then everything has been passed by one majority. Politicians used to go back and forth, and the difference between the two parties, and variance within, were larger. The American political duopoly is ruining our country, and making it an us versus system space, where you are shown to hate your political opponents. I agree not everyone needs to go to college, but I disagree in prices. Prices won't drop until states start funding like they did prior to the late 90s and administrations cut the fat from their ranks, neither of which I see happening sooner. I want to say student loans shouldn't be federally backed, but that's a touchy subject. Actually, in one of my political science classes, it was argued that having fewer people vote, voluntarily not due to being unable to, is a sign of happiness from the populace, as they do not feel a pressing need to vote. If they see little differences in their lives due to an election, the people tend to not vote, and it's usually due to being content. I think a lot of people realize it. I mean, middle schoolers can see it. However, since every person has different beliefs, they see the divide, but think that the other side should see things their way, meaning that the divide will never stop because there aren't enough people open to talking rational about a specific issue, and then being able to have a beer with the person they disagree with. It's always all or nothing with us. Just treat everyone kindly and the exact same. Sounds like a good policy to me. Joking aside, I think it's clear after a few thousand years that golden rule is not effective as a casual advice. People are still racist and homophobic, or worse yet, in denial that racism and homophobia exist. In a peaceful society, law becomes the best protection that minorities can rely on for equal rights. Dental and eye care should be part of medical insurance, and not treated as separate. Have an ENT problem that is affecting your gums and teeth, too? Sorry, bud, not my specialization. Go see a lesser practitioner whose separation of discipline is rooted, pun intended, to a time when your dentist and barber were the same guy. I typed up a whole response to an out-deleted question about whether vaccinations fall under the umbrella of bodily autonomy. I don't want to throw away my comment like that user did, so I'm posting my response under your comment. Question: not trying to be a troll, but does bodily autonomy include the right to abstain from vaccines? I'm vaccinated FYI. My answer: I suppose one could argue that that is a right. However, I would argue that if a person wants to participate in certain aspects of society, then vaccination is a condition of that participation. For example, you don't have to drive a car, but if you do, you'll need to satisfy certain conditions: register the vehicle, pay for insurance, wear a seat belt, don't drive if drinking, that one could be called a bodily autonomy issue skeptical, and abide by all the other laws of the road, but you do have the right not to drive.